I guess we're 1084, huh? We're at the scene. Welcome to a special edition of Blog Talk Radio. This week, we have also a special session. I guess we're not usually here in August, so it's kind of different being here in the summer. But with me today at FDIC, I have the founders of a company called 3AM Innovations. And to my right, I have Patrick O'Connor, Ryan Litt, who's the CEO. I guess you're the president now. And Steve is I don't know what you are, Steve. Steve
Director
Hintze?
of Sales Development.
Director of Sales. Steve and I actually worked together in a probate class together in 1986. August
Yes.
2nd was our anniversary yesterday. 35 years, but you bailed on me. So
Yeah,
I'm still on a job, you're not. So
I couldn't keep up, Danny. I just couldn't.
so anyways, 3 a.m. So I met these guys. I guess you were there the first year I met you guys. I don't know how many. I have no kind. It was 3 years ago. And I was walking the floor, just doing like I always do. And what attracted me to them was they had this crazy pallet wood kind of stand, and that's my hobby. I do a lot of work on pallet wood. So I came over. It was really nice. Nice job on that, by the way. And then I asked, so what are you guys all about? And then you told me what you were doing. You were doing the hopefully potentially firefighter tracking, right? Which is a big problem today in the fire service. And you got my attention. And I was like, wow. I said, I really like that, and from that, I said, listen, if you ever need anything, right, I'll be more than willing to help you guys out. And the relationship has kind of grown over the years. I'm still with the FDNY. I'm hopefully soon to be deputy chief, but I'm very happy sometimes to advise you guys when you need help. So anyway, so here we are 3 years later, and I know you guys have some exciting news. So just for the benefit of our audience, Ryan, why don't you just give us a quick snapshot of what 3AM is all about?
Sure. So we've built a system that we call Florian, and actually speaking to the earlier years when we first met Danny, it was very much inspired by some early conversations that we had. And we're really setting out to protect those who protect us as a core mission. I think that's maybe fairly general, but so specifically, we have built a platform, an adaptive tactical platform that's designed to drive simplified, actionable intelligence to commanders like yourself. And we believe that technology needs to be a silent partner. It's never going to fight a fire, but it can help to take in all of that information that you guys are constantly bombarded with. And that's our mission. Take it, simplify it, give you what you need, and that is it. And as we always say, our little phrase is optimizing your heads down so you can maximize your heads up. No one's intending to stare at a screen, but if you do, it better help you. And that's our goal.
Right. So I think I vividly remember something I might have said to Patrick. I said, just do me a favor, don't make my job harder. Right. I want you to actually make my job easier, because I don't want to be bogged down looking into screens and get distracted. Because as an incident commander, we all know that there's so much going on, especially when it's really on, when fire is out a few windows and radio reports are coming over, and you could tell by the heightened, like Steve, and you could tell the difference when it's real and when it's just, like kind of
Just a basic run.
So, there's a lot going on for the incident commander, and the last thing we need is to be bogged down with technology, So I really appreciate the fact that you guys are making our job easier, in a sense. So, one of the things I have to say from my own experience is that this whole idea of a missing firefighter is something that gives me a lot of concern. I had an incident a few months ago. We had a fire, I guess it was in February or March. It was a 3-story private wood frame. And it was really, I couldn't even see the front of the buildings. That's how bad it was, and there were people trapped. We were getting reports of people missing, and et cetera, et cetera. And as that goes, things got very chaotic very quickly. And one of my officers, responding to the call for people trapped, the apartment, let's say, was cut up into, like, they did some alterations to it that, we didn't expect.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, I'm at the command post with the deputy chief, and the deputy chief, Joe Dunleavy, he says to me, he says, Danny, we just got a Mayday. I didn't even hear it because I was so caught up in the moment. And I was like, I couldn't breathe. I was like, it was real. I knew it was real. you know, and okay, we got a Mayday. I said, Joe, you run the fire, right? I'll handle the Mayday. Or vice versa. Actually, it was the other way around. I said, you handle the Mayday. I'm going to keep running the fire. That's right. That's what we did. So Joe took care of the Mayday. We activated the RIT team, and it had a very successful outcome very quickly. But that's some sheer terror, that 1 minute, you know, and what you guys are doing, I really appreciate the fact that you're working very diligently in trying to solve this problem, which is, you know, it's one of these like Graham, his name, Graham, right? He comes out here every year. Graham, I can't remember his last name, but he talks about low frequency, high impact, you know, and a missing firefighter is one of those things that does not happen a lot, but when it does, oh boy, like you have to be ready. I know that you were inspired by something that happened in Buffalo, was kind of the impetus of this whole Florian 3 a.m. network, and it's actually grown, but we'll get to that in a little while. But you know, so anything that we can do to assist the incident commander in dealing with these Mayday situations is for us a blessing. So I brought Steve in. Steve and I were probies together. He went to Brooklyn, I went to the Bronx, and then you wound up coming to the good borough. You came to the Bronx when you were a captain. You saw the light, right? You said, I got to get to the Bronx. And you came up to the boogie down.
What are they all talking about here in the Bronx?
You came up to the boogie down to the real place, you know, and then you had gotten injured after 9/11, and now you're kind of helping these guys out as well. And I recommended you to these guys, and now you're kind of really firmly entrenched in the company, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is really cool, and I'm grateful to them for you know, letting me be a part of it. It's really an exciting time. It's something that you don't get a chance to do too often in the business world when you have an emerging technology like this, like something that could be a game changer all the way down. And it's something that isn't used right now. It's not out there. And it's something that's just going to help all commanders and all firefighters throughout the industry. And I see this really making, and it's hard to say like this, but making the fire scene safer. And by efficiencies, the efficiencies that this brings to a response just helps cut down any kind of mistakes that might happen, or not mistakes, but something that is unforeseen,
Like an oversight.
and an oversight.
It happens very easily.
And it happens all, yeah. So this helps avoid that. Just by the basic ability for when you're responding to have a 3D map in front of you. You can see the building you're going to in 3D, and you can see what kind of hazards might be there before you even get there, instead of showing up in front of the scene and not, you know, just knowing the address but not knowing the building until you finally get there. This helps with that. While you're responding, you actually can start doing your size up while you're going.
So, you know, what I like to say all the time is like information, knowledge is power, right? And when Steve and I got on the job in '86, we didn't have, what didn't we have? We didn't have computers. We had that old, looked like something out of the '50s, that teleprinting machine, you know, and everything was over the radio, and, you know, and
not even many radios.
Flintstone car, you know, the whole thing. So, you know, it was a little old school.
And even then, though, the radios, very few people had radios.
We didn't have, right.
Right.
A lot of the firefighters didn't have them. I didn't have one. I carried the can most of the time. I never had a radio.
No.
So there was all this, it was like this information void. Like there was just like there was just very few people had radios. That, you know, everything was on the dispatch talking on the department radio. So one thing that a lot of the guys in my company would pride themselves on, you could give them a address like, hey, 400 Brook Avenue. Like, yeah, that's a 20-story fireproof building. You know, we go there all the time, box 2186, whatever it is. You know, so, you know, in a sense too, even step back another generation where we had the bells, you know, and the voice alarm, and we had the running board and 2186 or 2172, Crimmins and 142, you know, the building. You know, so it forced the firefighters to really know their area. But this takes this, I think, to another level. Like when I saw it, and, you know, we'll get to Boston in a second, but, you know, seeing a map of your response area, right? So instead of like getting in the car and trying to read the SIDS information, the critical information that we send over, it's like a Twitter, and trying to visualize the building. Had I been there before? Do I know the building? Now it's like you turn on the rig, I guess, and you get a boom, you get a picture of
You
the
get HVAC units, air shafts, you get everything of it.
and I tell you, I can't even tell you how critical that is. Like just the fact, like sometimes, like I know in my district alone, in the Boogie Down, in the South Bronx, we have a lot of these kind of attached buildings, and they have these shafts right in the middle. Yeah, you can't see from the street, and could you imagine, like, you get a call for a fire in a whatever 3-story, and then the chief was looking at it like, hey guys, listen, be aware, we have shafts, and then he knows too to look for extension, right? Because
Auto exposure.
auto exposure, or even extension into the into the building next door, or either exposure on either side. I mean, that's tremendous, because that's one of the things that I'm always doing, right? When I get on scene, I get with the firefighters that go to the roof, all right, battalion 3 to a lot of 4-8 or 4-2, give me a report from the roof. Okay, yeah, chief, we got a shaft, interior shaft, we got fire out the windows. Now you're looking at it on a map. You see, you're getting a kind of a.
You could even look at it in Street View. You can see it directly in Street View between Bing or Google Street View.
So, besides the maps, what are some of the other attributes of the flooring system? I think hydrants you have something going on with hydrants as well.
That's overlaid in the map. So yeah, so while you're responding, and my joke is always hydrants on a stick, because as you're responding, they put the hydrants higher so that it doesn't get lost in the wash of the roadway. So hydrants up visible. So as you're responding, you can see the hydrants that you might want to go to. Also, it helps with the ability to put a hydrant out of service. So now it's really important for a first due engine officer and chauffeur to know if that hydrant's out of service. They know they have to stop short, or they know they're going to be going to the next one, and they know that before they get there. So instead of pulling up and finding a hydrant that and sometimes in the city we always do the discs on it. Other departments use other ways of marking the hydrants out of service, but you don't see that till you're right on top of it. With this now, as you're coming in, you already know in front of the building that hydrant's bad. Then you could also call for if you think you're going to need a relay or something.
I think the thing that's interesting with all the different departments that we work with, how troubled the even hydrant inspections can be. They're like written locations, and you go to the corner and it's actually on the other side.
Yes.
And trying to feed that information back to the utilities and making sure that everyone's operating on the same data is super challenging. And it seems so simple in flooring. You literally walk up to the hydrant with the 3D map and it's right in front of you. You tap it, there's no question that that's where it's located. So just like small things like that translate from what you've talked to me about and so many others, that you have real-time, up-to-date, hydrant-driven information, so you're not spending time to hit some hydrant that is not going to help you when you need it most.
To actually take it a little bit further, when your alarms actually accelerate and they go higher, you're on the 3rd alarm, 4th alarm. One thing that also we could do is you could, at your station, look in, and then you could actually, with a spark, into it, and you could see what hydrant's already in use. You could actually now make a plan before you even leave the apron.
That's
Okay,
That's
I see
incredible.
engine 28 is already at that corner. I see the ladder 10 is around here. When we come in, let's pull up Street View. Look, there's a chain link fence. We could actually get over that. That's front end on the the B side. And now you could actually make a plan of exactly how you're going to go off of everyone else currently operating, existing at the scene, and how you're going to come and help.
That's incredible. I remember when I was a very new lieutenant, right? I got promoted in '95, and I was mostly in a truck company in the squad. And this chauffeur in 45 engines, guy Bobby Straub, had like 30 years on the job or whatever. And I remember going to a fire with him, and I was like, no, the fire's over here or whatever. And he's like, nope. He says, we're taking this hydrant over here, because those old school guys, they knew their hydrants. Guys like him, Richie Bonacorsa, like in 73 engine, they know their hydrants, man, and he told me, he says, well, if I get on this hydrant, we're all on the same main, but if I'm on this hydrant, I'm on a cross-connected main.
Right.
We're going to get more water at that hydrant. And that ties into what you're saying about these multiple alarms, because in New York City, we have a satellite unit that goes on a second alarm, right? And they're basically the water resource officer, right? And so it's their job, really. The chief is supposed to say like, hey, Lou or Cap, like, what are you thinking? And like, okay, yeah, use this one's a 48-inch main on Southern Boulevard, whatever it is. We're going to use that one, because we have a taxpayer, whatever it is. So that hydrant information is like beyond belief. This chauffeur I was talking about, Richie Bonacorsa, he was a fireman in 73 engine when I was in 17 truck. And he was still a firefighter when I was chief, and still am in the 3rd Battalion. He just retired like last year. I think he aged out. And this guy, Richie, was so good. I mean, there was just nobody like him. He's unparalleled, and we had a job. It was a good brownstone. We had a fire on the 1st and 2nd floor. And I mean, it was just, it went like clockwork, this fire, they got a unit citation and everything. And we were critiquing it afterwards. And I was talking to the captain, he had the job, and it's like, I said, man, you guys knocked it out of the park. He goes, yeah, Richie knew that hydrant was out of service, but not many chauffeurs know which hydrants in their district are out of service. Because what we're supposed to do, right? We put it on the running board at the house watch, okay, hydrant in front of, Beck Street, 762 Beck is out of service. And then hopefully the guys will
Let's
remember.
hopefully alleviates that, but then, like you talked about before, as being a covering officer. The other
There you
part
go.
is the not, you're not going to know your area, and sometimes you get a detailed chauffeur in from outside who doesn't know the area. So this just really helps with that also. It also helps because we have a turn-by-turn instruction also. So how it used to work is that you got the box in. If I was a covering lieutenant or captain, and now I have a detailed chauffeur, you had to run to the house watch, look up how
Right.
route cards on indexes,
Mhm.
by box, and then come back and look at it and try to read it off while you're responding. Now, very simply with Florian, you can just give a
Yeah.
voice command and also have Florian give you turn-by-turn instructions right there. So if you're a covering officer, now that's a little bit of weight off your shoulders of knowing where you're going, where the box is.
There's a lot to be said for that, because we had a fire, I don't know, about 2 years ago. It was a 2-story brick attached. And we had a covering chauffeur in the engine, first 2 engine, your old company. And he was from another company. And, I just assume that, they're going to respond the way I expect them to respond, right? Go down Hunts Point Avenue, make a right, blah, 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 whatever. So for some reason, the truck went one way, the engine went the other way. And now we're already starting to get behind the 8 ball, because now we're going to have a problem, right? So now the chauffeur, because he was not familiar with the block, he kind of had to come in the wrong way. So now the back step is facing the wrong way.
Right.
And the fire was coming out the windows on the Delta side, the 4th side, just one window. All right, cup of tea. I'm looking at the captain, they're stretching the line. They're gonna be up there in about a minute, and then, open a line and knock it down, and it's like this. And I'm looking, and I'm like, okay, now it's out 2 windows. Now it's out 4 windows. Now
Let's
it's
go,
through the
guys.
roof, and there's still no water. And finally, I politely said to the second door engine, I said, would you please get me water?
Right.
And it wound up going, I think the deputy wanted to give a second alarm, and I was just like, we're good. We'll just give me an extra engine. We'll be okay. But the point being is that something very simple
Right.
as just a wrong turn
Yeah.
can create this whole series of, like, it's almost snowballs into like a domino effect. Like one thing goes wrong, then 2, then 4, then in my time on the job, the whole time I've been on the job, anytime that we've ever had any problems, right, big problems where we have firefighter fatalities or civilian fatalities or whatever, usually if you root the cause, if you boil it all down to what the problem was, it's water. And just the fact that you guys are on top of that hydrant and the turn by turn, you kind of glanced over that. And
Just give
again,
no morsels.
the turn by turn,
Well, to actually advance on the turn by turn, knowing where the other apparatus are. So that's
that's
another thing.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, we found that a lot of people only, or a lot of other softwares only give the dispatch or the chief the AVL. So they're the only ones who actually can see where the other apparatus is. We give it directly down to the lieutenants and the captains.
That's
And we actually
critical.
have a story. One of the departments we're working with, they were going to a call. It was 2 ladders. So the first 2 ladder was out of quarters, and they were coming from a different direction.
Yeah.
Well, the second ladder saw that because they saw the dot on the screen coming,
Wow.
and they repositioned themselves so they had better placement, and they did it all on their own.
And then they were
No
able to
chiefs,
get-
no one had to give them instructions. They saw where the other ladder was and they made the decision on their own. And as you said, snowball, small things get bigger. Well, now
Yeah.
they have better placement, optimal placement, rather than having to actually squeeze around or get through.
And 2 trucks had 3 sides of the building, which is
That,
exactly what you
that,
want.
that to me is just mind boggling
It's
because
simple, but it's a huge, huge thing.
like just the mere fact that they were like everybody's on, it seems to me like with this system that with the Florian system that everybody is reading from the same sheet of music. We're
Yeah.
all on the same page. So everyone knows where everyone is. And that's a great point. I mean, that officer that did that, I commend him because I can't tell you how many times that things happen where someone's out on building inspection or they're coming from another box or whatever. Next thing you know, I have the truck in front of the building. Now I have the engine and now I have another truck that's totally blocked out. And now here we are, we all know where we're going. And, you know, we need that cushion when we're responding because, you know, we have this like small window of time, right? To get it right. Because it's not like, you know, I always say this about firefighting. It's not like we're in a conference room and then like we all, okay, listen, at 4 o'clock today, we're gonna have a fire on Southern Boulevard and 156th Street. You're gonna take the Bravo side with your ladder. You're gonna take the hydrant, you know, and we're gonna all plan this out. This happens like that.
Right.
And what you guys are doing is giving the chief and all the officers the tools
Mhm.
to really make these decisions much better.
Another thing that was inspired in a large facility fire was location. So speaking of turn by turn, most turn by turns bring you to the front door.
Right.
And this particular chief told us how much valuable time that he got when responding units came to the front and he had to redirect them on the back. And this was a very large facility and it took upwards of minutes to relocate and restation. And so much more of the structure had become involved by the time that happened. So we
Yeah.
have the ability to drive very specific coordinates. You can send people to exact spots irrespective of Google Maps or whatever turn by turn. It's going to take you to the exact place that you need to be stationed. Small things, but again, as you've said, and as so many chiefs have said, like seconds are absolutely everything. And if you have to redirect, you're gonna lose.
I can't even tell you how important that is. I'll go back to when I was a captain. So this had to be probably back in, I don't know, 15, 16 years ago. I was working in a truck company in a towel lab, right? I was working in a towel lab. And when I came on a job, I was in 17 truck, we were towel lab. And it was very normal, very common that like, you know, we had a lot of vacant buildings, right? So, you know, Steve will tell you in Brooklyn too, we had vacant buildings, you know, you want that towel ladder.
Towel ladders
in
always need
position.
to be there.
You need that towel ladder in the right position, you know? And a lot of times, you know, I remember responding, you know, and I hear my officer, the captain, call the dispatch, hey, 17 to the, you know, to the Bronx. I said, you got any special instructions for the towel ladder? Yeah, 17, you know, respond in on 143rd Street and Cypress and, you know, take that, the chief wants you in this part of the building, you know, whatever. Okay, 10-4, and it saves all that time, right? So all this time is being saved because we had that direct communication. I don't see that happening as much anymore. I had a fire now 20 years later, I'm a captain and I called dispatcher. I said, okay, ladder to the borough. I said, any special instructions? And nope, just, you know, report to the command post. Now I have a towel ladder. This towel ladder is a weapon that we need in these big fires, right? We had row frames going. We had a whole series, like 5 frames going, right? So sure enough, I did what the dispatcher said. I pull up to the command post, you know, we go to the command post. I walk up to him and he's looking at me and goes, is it like I could see he's like frazzled. He's like, Danny, get that blah, 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 over there on the 2 side, you know, and so now I had to go back, you know, and I had to tell the chauffeur. Now we had to get around parked cars, and then by this time the fire had already taken another building, you know. And could you imagine if we had something like this, like me in the firehouse, like I see the whole thing going on, like, and the chief just types it, okay, you know, ladder 1, take the Bravo side and set up your towel ladder. I mean, come on.
You kind of just touched on something too, is the ability to have remote assist. It doesn't have to be the actual chief or IC in the field doing it. They could have someone back at
No kidding.
your alarm
Wow.
office with, you know, a light duty person or someone.
Well, in some departments, when the alarm's raised, they'll send a chief actually to the fire alarm office to
No
help
kidding.
a little bit, but they don't have the tool sets to coordinate, right? And
Yeah.
so if we can get and enable that, I think that makes a ton of sense. And as you're saying, saving those valuable seconds, that's what it's all about.
And also just having that situational awareness right off the bat, because the other aspect of this, there's so many things that we can go into with fluorine. But one of the other things is scribbles. So scribbles, it gives the chief access to a simple pen on the mat. And they can write, so right off the bat, just if they don't touch it again, they could put the exposures that they want. So if you have a building that's taking up almost a city block or a large structure, you can set which is A or 1, B, C, D, 2, 3, 4, right off the bat. Now everyone responding sees that, and they know exactly what's the A side of the building, instead of having to guesswork or wait for everyone to come in and start to put it over the radio and confuse people. So because even that, even over the radio, some people have a tough time just visualizing exactly where that's going to be. So if you just draw it right on the map and everyone sees
And
it,
everybody sees that.
every
100%.
apparatus as they're responding sees what was designated A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3.
I think the thing that was really important to us too is making sure it works on those machines that a lot of officers think are dead weight. Most of them say it should be their coffee coaster. For the machine that they actually have in the rig, they're saying that it's too slow, it's too old, it doesn't do anything useful. And so for us, it's about transforming, but what if it was? And so now for that complete awareness, to your point, that not only chiefs see, command centers see, but even in the rig, you're seeing the same and operating from the same information. Really important for us.
So once we're on scene, right, now it's getting a little complicated, but, like for all this stuff, but this is all happening as we're responding, right? But
Yes.
now we're on scene,
Mhm.
and one thing I could see the value, I know that you could make zones, right?
Yes.
Let's say, so I know for myself, my own experience that, a lot of times we get these taxpayers, right? That's a 1 or 2 story strip mall type, but class type 3 construction. And the biggest problem that we have in these types of buildings is that parapet wall in the front.
Mhm.
Because it's sitting on top, all this weight is sitting on top of a lintel. And, a cubic foot of brick weighs about 100 pounds. So multiply that by whatever, you're talking about a lot of weight. And we've lost firefighters from the parapet wall collapse, right? So, sometimes they could curtain wall, they could just flat out collapse like a 90-degree. And this is a major concern, this collapse zone in front of the building. And what I could see, and sometimes you pull up and you can't see the front of the building. There's so much smoke and fire, it's just
Especially
billowing out.
summertime right now with the humidity.
Right,
too.
with everything staying
Everything's
down.
staying
and
down.
So like I have trouble, and you got so much going on. You tell an engine company, hey, engine 1, do me a favor, get a 2.5 into that exposure, or just keep the line, that 2.5 on the, into the store. And, then you get distracted, you look over here and you want to set up a towel out or whatever. And next thing you know, they're in the collapse zone, right? Now, engine 1 is in the collapse zone. Now I can't see them in the collapse zone because it's obscured by the smoke. But yet, I'm sure that if you set up some sort of perimeter and said, okay, we're going to call this collapse zone with your scribbles. Now I see these dots or whatever in that collapse zone. I'm like, whoa, engine 1, you're in the collapse zone.
Well, with that, and there's another tool called it's a geo-fencing tool. So you could actually build that fence so that as soon as someone walks in,
Would they get an alert?
it alerts.
Wow.
So it alerts right on the commander's screen. So now all of a sudden, if someone walks into a dangerous area, it'll show up on their screen, and they can have them talk to them about getting removed from that spot. Right off the bat. Also, they would be notified.
Yeah, and
that
everybody
that
would.
they're in. Yeah, and everyone would.
Again, all of those
everyone that walked
rigs.
in too.
And
Every
it, yeah,
computer.
like it doesn't just do the command screen, it goes across your entire, everyone who's at that scene, they all get it the same. It's a common operating picture.
But
So,
the main thing was that the commander sees.
Yeah, the
that,
commander sees it
like,
as well.
I just have a whole company that just walked into the collapse zone.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
get them.
But I would envision, I just know from, being the battalion chief in the Bronx, I show up, I get one other chief in the beginning, right? He's my, what we call ops chief or section chief, or, we call him the all hands chief, but basically he's the fire sector, right? And I know the NIMS people, they have a problem with, we use the terminology sector, but that's just the way we speak, But once you start escalating into a second alarm now, especially a taxpayer or a commercial building or a large H, then we get a safety chief, we get a resource unit leader, we get another chief for attack, then we get the SOC chief, we get the safety chief, we got all these chiefs, you know. I would have to envision that this is pretty now getting a little hands-on. Like I can't see myself looking at the screen. There's gonna have to be another set of eyes watching this.
And that's kind of where we
But
talk
there
about
also
the
doesn't
remote
have to
assist.
be though. Like there doesn't need to be someone. I mean, it is something for the chief to be able to look down at, or if something happens to be alerted of something.
Right.
But it is it can be a hands-free tool, but
Right.
it would be advantageous for a department to have someone that is as the accountability officer or someone.
Yeah, like
or a
accountability
safety
officer,
officer
safety chief,
or a
or
safety chief to have this tool, in front of
what
them.
we call in New York, the resource unit leader, right?
Mhm.
He's in charge of handling all the resources. So as they come in, they report into the resource unit leader. And he tells the chief, hey, you know, I got 2 engines right here in staging. That's a perfect guy to be kind of
Well, I was
watching.
even gonna say, you could set up a geofence and he could be alerted that they're in staging, so then he could see, hey, look, we got them in staging right now, and you would actually, as an IC, could
Right.
just glance down and see it. But you kind of, real quick, I want to touch on one thing you did mention, like with the smoke in front of the building, and you can't see. One of the chiefs, John Riker, that we work with, he always says it's always a sunny day in Florida. Because when you're looking inside Florian, you could see the front of the building, you
Right.
could see it, and it's even if it's 3 a.m. and it's pitch black, you still have a beautiful sunny view of the structure that you're going to. So I just want to.
So did I touch on all the attributes of what it does now? Did I miss anything, or is there other things I
there's-
didn't talk about?
Well, just going into a little more with the geofencing tool, like Patrick just said, you could use that for rehab also. You could set up a rehab area. Also, the other big part with that is using the same geofencing tool to give an Amber Alert. So now we have the ability to give an Amber Alert if you have like a big H-type building right next to another H-type, and you don't want those people coming out of the street because they're where you want them to shelter in place. You can do an Amber Alert for that one building right next to it, and then push it out for people to just stay there. So you can give that message, and directly from the command post, you would geofence that building and do that. Also, though, if it was a bigger area, and let's say you have a major gas leak and you need to evacuate people, you could use that geofence area, the geofence tool, cordon off a whole area.
Right.
And now every person in that area will get their phone, their cell phones will ping that there's an alert that they need to start self-evacuate
Yeah.
right off the bat. And that, I mean, just look at what's going on with wildland fires too. If the wind shifts and starts going for a
Right.
whole another village or something, you can start them evacuating much sooner. Because right
Yeah.
now it takes roughly over 50 minutes for an Amber Alert to go through. We have the ability to give the incident commander that power to give they would take a course, and then right from that point they can give an Amber Alert, and it cuts that time tremendously.
Right. You know, it's funny that you should say that, because I could have used this last year. I had a fire. It was this really hot summer day, right? So we all know when it's hot, like 80 and 90 degrees, and we have that what we call reverse stack effect, right? So
Yes.
it's hotter outside, the smoke doesn't rise, and then it kind of pushes back down. Like I've had fires where I pulled up and smoke is like pouring. I just had one probably 2 weeks ago where the smoke was pouring out the front door in this project building, this high-rise building. And last year I had it was like a non-event. It was like what we call a compactor fire, right?
Right.
It used to be an 18 when we were firemen, right?
Yes.
It was 1 and 1 and no big deal. Well, what happened was it was a really, really hot summer night. And I arrive on scene, and there had to be 100 people out in the street in front of the building and another 100 in the back. And some guy comes up to me very proud of himself. He says, "Chief, just I evacuated like everybody. I banging on doors, And the smoke was I'm telling you, I was getting guys reporting they couldn't see the hand in front of their face in the hallways. Because what happens is the smoke just sits in the building, So what should have been a very innocuous rubbish fire in a compactor chute turned into a major ordeal where I needed a ventilation unit and all this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, boy, if I had that Amber Alert and everyone gets a ping on their cell phone, hey, listen, it's a small fire, stay in your apartment. It's all good. I think we sent at that fire 10 people to the hospital with smoke inhalation, which should have been nothing. It should have been like
It's just stayed in their apartment.
just
the
a
door shut.
little rubbish fire, knock it down in the chute and that's it. End of story, and here I am now. I have medics come in and it's becoming a big ordeal because everybody decided to leave their apartment, and in these high-rise buildings, I have to say, we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of 9/11 and the whole world watched those two buildings fall down, right? And, up until then, it's amazing, like, that people don't understand what it means to live in a fireproof building, right? A building that's fireproof means that the fire is not going to extend through the floors. It's not going to extend anywhere. It's not going to get to any voids. You're in a concrete box, and it's all these like boxes on top of each other. And the biggest problem is the smoke, right? But what happens on 9/11 is that the whole world watched these two buildings collapse, and that probably set us back centuries. Because people now, they just hear a siren and they're ready to jump out windows. And I'm not exaggerating.
No.
We had a fire, when was it now? Just recently. It was like within the last 3 months, where it was a fire in a fireproof building, and we had to physically restrain people from jumping out the windows.
Wow.
And it's because they have this kind of mindset now that, oh, well, this building's on fire, man. This is bad. We're stuck. And unless it's in your apartment, right? We all know that. We're firefighters, that you're basically good, And so I see a lot of value in this Amber system that you work. I really would encourage you.
I pause Amber Alert, right?
I would really encourage you to really tout that to the departments that you're going to be working with, because especially, along the East Coast and even the West Coast, but especially like in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, we have all these coastal, along the intercoastal, with all these high rises, tons of them, and I mean, they get a fire in there and, it's like, it's panic, and how reassuring is that to get a call from the fire department? Like we have to do this manually now in the FDNY. Like what happens is, I'll be in my car, and as I'm going from my firehouse to where the high rises are, I get calls from the dispatch. All right, Bronx to Battalion 3, we get reports of 19K, 14 George, 7 Larry, all these
Right.
apartments, people calling, they were all just dying for information. They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And this sounds to me like, we could really use this to our advantage,
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be evacuation or shelter in place. There are other messages that we could send too. So
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be, it's not just those two. And especially certain areas, as we know, all over the states, every department has their own challenges and certain aspects of emergency work that not New York City or Boston or Atlanta have. So you could actually customize that and have it for whatever you might need. So that's the other point of that, which is really,
I see some value too, as we're speaking. I'm thinking about your geofencing, and I was part of that 300 firefighter officer cadre that went down to New Orleans after Katrina.
knowledge.
New Orleans,
Yes.
my favorite. Now my second favorite city now is New Orleans, and when we got there, I mean, it was like that was a disaster. I mean, that the place was flooded. The hydrants were like underwater. I mean, it was a disaster, and the hydrants were out of service, and that's a whole other story what we did down there. But what I did see was that the USAR teams that came in, they have to use they put up the squares, and then they mark them and stuff
Searched
like
or-
that,
yeah.
searched and not searched, and
Mm.
victims and hazards and et cetera, et cetera. And I could see. And then I became a member of the incident management team. I'm an ops, I'm a div soup or an ops section chief. And, we do everything with maps. Like we have a physical map, and I used to have to update it every day. We have what we call incident action plan. And we have to look at, incident action plan. We have to see which divisions are where and branches and whatnot. And and I remember, like, especially after Sandy, we had to physically go back to the ops tent, and we had maps all over the room, and we were physically like crossing off areas that we searched and took care of. And it's a very laborious, like, I'll give you an example, talk about technology, right? So when we first got started on Sandy, right, we had to canvass everybody that in the affected zone. So it was Rockaway, it was parts of Brooklyn, Staten Island, everything that was like kind of south.
Right.
And we had thousands of sheets of paper, right? Like this, it was a form and it had to be filled out. And then someone said, we're working on getting every firefighter a tablet, like a little iPad or something like that. And they put that form on the tablet, and the efficiency level went from like, it was just exponential, like how efficient we were. Like all of a sudden, these stacks that had to be manually sorted and checked out, now we're all going into a central data bank, you know? So I saw firsthand technology like helping us big time. Like we had, instantly we knew exactly who was accounted for, who wasn't accounted for, but yet we still had to manually work off the maps and had to kind of cross people off.
And like you said, that's a key point with disasters are on the rise, right? And we see that all the time, whether it's natural, a lot of natural events are happening. And it's important to have everyone on the common operating picture.
Right.
So now as people come in with something like Florian, you can see the mutual aid companies if they're connected with it. Or if we're connected with FEMA, we can give out the Florian.app, so that for this event, now everybody is seen. And instead of guessing where these other companies are or sending somebody somewhere, but not knowing if they got there or how well they're doing in that spot.
I think that like a piece that I would be remiss to not talk about though, when we're talking about this, is that Florian can work off grid, 100% off the internet. So I would assume that down in Katrina, infrastructure was probably challenged to say the least.
Zero, yeah.
So it's one thing to have a map, and I'm sure people listening are probably think, cool, but if I'm just by myself with my own digital map, what good is that? We are very conscientious of that. We've started with people like yourself to influence that when things are tough, you got to make sure these things work. So Florian keeps working. Everything is completely enabled off grid. It's all native to the computer. You don't need a web browser and all that. And then what's also good is we'll share that information to anybody who's close, irrespective of the internet. You know, one thing that's interesting, you think about, like, everyone thinks that like GPS doesn't work for them. Most of the time GPS definitely works. It's the internet that is challenged to share that GPS information. The satellites aren't affected. The infrastructure on the ground is. So we can take that information, we can find where you are, and we can share that with each other. And we can do it wirelessly in a way that does not require the internet. Really important for us. We're going to be doing some exercise with the Navy actually at the end of the month. They're taking us into the woods, but similar challenges of no internet, and make sure that everybody has that common operational picture.
Yeah, and to actually expand on Fort Katrina, at base camp, you guys drew out all your zones, all your search areas and everything. Since then, when you leave and you go off grid, those zones don't disappear. They're still there. So now you're not going to go and research a building that was already searched.
Right.
You can see where you are, and you can see where the search zones are, and you could draw, okay, I searched this one, this one, this one, and then when you go back, as what Ryan said, it'll sync up. And so then command, when you go back to base camp and you connect to their land, then they get all your data, your pathway, everything that you did when you're off grid. Now everyone could see it. For tomorrow, now they say, okay, our search zone grew by this. These buildings still need to be searched. And when people go offline again, they still know where they've been and what they're doing.
And it's also something that's amazing with the system is that it's also replayable. So any incident that you have, you can go back to after it's even shut down. So let's say you have a certain fire plan that you have for a building. Now you can go back and see how did our pre-fire plan work at this particular fire? Was it, did it help out? Do we need to augment it or change any part of our pre-fire plan? But it also is for training. Now you could also see, all right, what did everyone and how did they did they get to their positions? What response did we have? And now you can go back to that and just see how everyone did. And now you can use that as a training tool and bring everyone back together and say, listen, this is the job we had. Let's rewind it and then let's take a look at where everyone went, what everyone did. And it's just going to make better firefighters all the way around.
So guys, tell me what's next for Florian? What's some of the technology? How are we doing with the I guess when I met you guys, it was really all about tracking, and now we got into this, which is phenomenal. But we still have is the tracking on the back burner, or is it still being?
No, the tracking is very, and I think what we can even finish up in an interesting way of what you started, where we talked about, don't forget you're making my job harder, which by the way, I've said to Patrick a million times should be tattooed on my arm, because you said that to me. You go, I appreciate that you're focused on this, but don't forget you're making my job harder. And it never has left me. So I think about that all the time. And now when we're talking about tracking is where things get really complicated, because there's a lot of information, and how can we transform that so we're not making your job harder? And at the end of the day, there's a couple of things that are important to us. One is there are different devices, there are different sources of information that are available. They're not available in the same place. And that's a problem. When you as a chief have to go back and forth between different sources of information. We were out in Australia, and one of the chiefs was showing me, he had a list of very cryptic identifiers that represented different radios. And he had to cross-reference that with printouts from his HR system, trying to map who was doing what based on writing position, trying to connect all these dots while things are happening. That's just lazy man's technology. Like, that's not what technology is here to help you do. It's good at doing those things. Pull in all that data. What do you need to understand about, oh, this is this writing position or even this person? Don't worry about all the data sources that are underneath it. So to answer your question about tracking, one part that we look at, we were talking about, how we solve these. I think a lot of times you hear this idea of like a silver bullet, like this one magical thing that's going to solve it for everyone. And then you work with agencies that work with other agencies, and you realize, well, what happens when you have it and the next guys don't? Now the IC is only seeing 50% of the operation acutely, wow, 100%. And then these guys are completely dark. So you start realizing it's not about a bullet, it's about an arsenal. We got to make sure to put everything together. So to answer that, we're looking, and we're partnering actually with a bunch of people that are here too, to bring all of this information together. To ultimately, again, roll up to that's Patrick, that's Steve, that's Danny, and not forcing you as the incident commander to need to understand what that means. So what does that mean with regards to tracking? We can get tracking from different things, and we need to, right? It depends on the situation. Sometimes this particular technology makes sense. Sometimes it's this one, it's that one, right? Bringing all those things together is the number one goal right now. And we're partnering with quite a few people out there on the floor that some people might have in the old days said, like, they're your competitors. I said, no, they're going to be our partners, because if we're here to solve a problem, if we're here to help people, we need to do it together, because there are times when that solution is going to work. When that, like, for example, something that's mounted to a breathing apparatus, perfect until you're not using a breathing apparatus. Now what? Right. And so I think you got to bring all of these things together and make sure that it's fluid for you. Where's Steve? That's it. So that's really what we're focused on right now. We've got some good partnerships. We're doing some big operational exercises, multi-agency, some big kind of sporting events and some big high scale things. And it's all about bringing all that stuff together and handing it to someone like you and says, is this simple?
Right.
Do you understand what's happening?
So as far as the present now,
Mhm.
right? I don't know if you're allowed to disclose, but is there any departments that are right now piloting this stuff or using it, or going to be in the near future? Or?
Yeah, we have several using them. I mean, to your point, I don't necessarily have press clearance per se, but I'm, at the end of the day, definitely some that I think all of us listening will understand and know. And
Some big
love and
cities, I
respect.
understand.
Yes, sir. But I'm loyal to a fault, as you guys have all commented about a million times over. So I want to make sure to not kind of drag that out, but definitely it is about high scale. It's about low scale or small scales too.
Right.
Patrick's from a volunteer department. That's a huge amount of the fire service, over 70%. So we're making sure that the big guys are being covered and the small guys too. So we're really busy with rolling out with all of those different departments. But the reason why we talked about things we talked about today is because as we work with these departments, you realize, hey, we need to get this whole infrastructure moving. And I think that starts with the vehicle. Everyone's got one. All operations do. That old thing can actually do a lot of good things. So let's get that going. And then once we get into the firefighter tracking piece, which we have, but it's less complicated because the rest of the system is part of your SOP. There's a lot of change. I was speaking with a chief last week, and he was showing me all the training books, firefighter 1, 2, all the officer training books. He's like, show me one page in any of these books that talks about technology. And he's like, there's not one. So everybody spends, their career progressing through the ranks and doing amazing things. And now they're being handed technology. That's a challenge. So I think it's about starting from the ground and growing our way into it instead of throwing all of that right off the cuff and not having people ready to use it, to your point, to making things simpler, not more difficult.
Also with what he was talking about too, with just to go back one with the businesses, everyone used to operate or does operate in their own silos, and they won't feel like they didn't share. They just wanted their product to be
Right.
the one, right? But meanwhile, it was lacking. Everyone's product is lacking. And I think one of the great things about what we're trying to do with Florian is integrate with many different technologies and take in and make it everybody. Because as we've said before, not one company is going to solve this.
Yeah,
It's going to
sounds
take
like it, yeah,
multiple. And
yeah.
it's the whole, like it takes a village type of a
Yeah, and
thing.
this
It
is, to
takes
me,
all
is
businesses.
of like importance beyond scale. So I know we've gone, we're almost at that hour mark, and I want to kind of wrap this up. So you guys are here at booth 516.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Your booth. So just so I'm spending the next month probably gonna be on my bike. I'm going from Naples, Florida to Ground Zero. We're coming in on September 11th for this Brotherhood ride. And we're raising money I'm honoring the guys that are dying from cancer from 9/11. And we're helping out a group called the Friends of Firefighters.
Mhm.
Nancy
Hello.
Carbone, she does an incredible job of helping guys with PTSD. And the monies that I'm raising is going towards her group. But you guys were gracious enough to, we got this coin. It's a Dublin Fire Brigade / New York City FDNY Ground Zero, World Trade Center coin. And if people come visit you at booth 516, and they come and say hello and get a little chat, we're gonna give them a coin. You guys have agreed to donate some money to my good friend Nancy, huh?
Yeah,
100%, sir.
I think that's
Absolutely.
pretty phenomenal. You're gonna give some $5 a coin to
Yep.
Nancy, and I think that is just,
Yeah, so as
Wow.
people come in
Yeah.
and they can tell us, they could come by, talk to us about different situations that they've been in, especially if they were in a leadership role, trying to go through to where Florian could have helped them.
Yeah.
Especially, then that's great. They can come by and we'll give them a
See
coin
me
and then
and get a
donate
coin?
and donate $5.
Smallest thing we can do.
You're gonna be
Yes.
there, right?
Yeah.
I'll be there for the whole time.
Yeah.
And I'll be happy to give a coin out to whoever wants to come by, because I think it's a great cause, and I think what Nancy's doing is unbelievable. Then I'm doing a second ride to just add to the insanity and work with the FDNY 343 guys. So I got some shirts too, but I sold out already. But anyway,
Yeah, we'll
so I'll
track,
be,
we'll track Danny and Florian, and
There you go.
we'll see him on.
so I'm
this.
doing 2,000 miles of biking. So anyway, guys, good luck. I mean, I know I'm still on the sidelines. I'm still ready. I'm waiting for that.
Go
Wayne,
go to the
I'm
bullpen.
waiting for the lefty, or actually the righty. I'm waiting for the call, but it's okay. I'm in no rush. I still love what I'm doing. So with that, guys, again, thank you for being here. I know I see the two Anthony's out there very patiently trying to get here. So I'm afraid of them. So I think we're gonna have to cut this off. But anyway, until then, we'll see you again. Be safe, and I'll see you on the fire floor, I guess.
Yeah,
Thanks, guys.
thanks for the opportunity.
you.
Thank you.
Danny, thanks.
Thanks, Danny.
Right.
All right.